Now we are going to transition to We the Present. So this is where we're really going to explore about what's possible when we do things together. And another awkward moment of people looking at you as I introduce you. Okay. I'm just going to grab everybody's attention. Clap if you can hear me. There we go. The power is with me. Power to the people. So we are starting with the speaker nearest me, Julián Castro. Woo! As Patrice is waving her arms behind me and announcing that he is the CEO of the Latino Community Foundation, the nation's largest Latino-serving foundation, and a place that has launched 33 giving circles. He has been the mayor of San Antonio. He has been U.S. Secretary of HUD. And most importantly, he was raised by his mother, Rosie Castro, a civil rights and Chicana activist, and his grandmother, Victoria Castro, on the west side of San Antonio, which is why it is in his DNA to love and serve community. Next, we have Thao-Urabe, a local celebrity and a visionary movement builder whose life work is rooted in the belief that communities already hold the wisdom to shape their own futures and can do so when they are trusted and resourced. She is co-founder, and I love this, Chief Belief Officer of Rooted to Last. She's launched efforts across sectors, including BMPP giving circles, which is truly, and I'm not supposed to have favorites, and all my other groups in the room, I love all my circles. But BMPP is literally a unicorn group. They do such dynamic work. They're intergenerational Asian families, and I got to hold a kitten at one of their events. And then last but not least, we have R.T. Rybak, our fearless leader, president and CEO of the Minneapolis Foundation, a place that deeply invests into collective giving. And I know that we deeply invest because I have foundations across the country asking me, how do I get to do this work? And I say, because our leadership believes in it. He's the former mayor of Minneapolis. He believes in relationships are the foundation of lasting change. And he really lived into collective giving work as a member of the Building Forward Fund, where he joined a group of 11 community leaders and shared power as they figured out where to invest $1 million in our community. And so to kick off this conversation, I'm going to start with Bo. You describe yourself as a possibilian. Who are you, and what is an experience that shaped your understanding of belonging?
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Sarah. And my gosh, I'm so starstruck because, look, I'm in between two no, just amazing leaders, people that I admire and look up to, and also believe that are, like your leadership, it's not something that you talk about, but you are living it, and I think that is so important. So thank you for being here, and thank you, Sarah, Patrice, the whole Minneapolis Foundation team. I feel like I've been here from the beginning a little bit of this journey, and to watch like this gathering, I'm so inspired and just moved by how much this way of work has changed the foundation. So thank you for your leadership. I say I'm a possibilian because, like many of you, I was born into systems that I did not create, right? I inherited these systems along with all of you, and but growing up in it, I always knew that, you know, there were times when it didn't work for me, right? And being kind of the child navigator for my parents who were refugees here, at a certain point, I started asking, like, why does it work this way? Or it shouldn't work this way. And so instead of just asking and asking, at some point, I started to say, well, what am I going to do about it, right? And that just made me push myself to say, well, if you don't like it, what do you want to do about it? And also, it's not just constantly going against what is there, but needing imagination, right? And so I always say, you can't just be against something. You actually have to know what you are for, and that the thing that you want might not yet exist. So you actually have to create that space in your mind and your heart, and to be able to imagine that. And so I was constantly finding myself in these imagination spaces, and people are like, well, you know, this is terrible that this is happening. And my first response is always, not just what will you do about it, but let's dream that, so that we know what we're working towards, right? And so that means that whatever I don't like, I always think there's a new possibility, right? We can't just be shouting about the things that we don't like. And so I just really believe that if we dream more, we can actually do more, and so it comes from that place of positivity. And I think that when you're a child growing up in a refugee camp, you can't contain your future to that space that you are in, right? So it's always been with me. And I am a child of Mai Veng and Neng Chua Tao, my parents, who were born in the mountains of Laos, who 4 generations before them immigrated to Laos from China, and they were nomads because they were part of a culture that did not believe that you should own land, but that the land was something that gave to you. And so I grew up in a culture that honored the environment, and then that you had to take care of each other. And so I grew up in a culture where I was always surrounded by elders. And even when we didn't have a lot, I didn't know it because so many people took care of me. I was born during a time of war where if the adults who were around me did not love me, I would not have survived. And then, you know, came to America where my parents really believed in this idea that America was where we would have opportunities. And so even though we came with nothing, they really believed in it, and they made me believe in it. And along the way, I found out that it was not as easy as they had hoped to achieve the American dream, but that I had every opportunity to try to be different. And so I really have been fortunate to have been a part of the movement work that has both served people in need, but then to also radically reimagine what we hope the future can be for our children, and to do that in a very intergenerational kind of way. So thank you. Yeah.
It's wonderful to be here with. Wonderful to be here with Bo, and always good to be here with RT and Sarah and Patrice and the foundation team. Thank y'all for the invitation to be here. Yeah, I guess maybe I'll start at it from a perspective that's very personal to me. I'm a twin, as some of y'all may know, and I have a twin brother who says that the way to tell us apart is that I'm a minute uglier than he is, but I'm actually a minute older. And you know, when I think about community, like a lot of us, so much of my experience with community, of course, is the larger world out there, but started with my family. I grew up with a mom that was a Chicana activist, this hellraiser, but also as a twin, somebody that, you know, grew up in this intensely close relationship that I always described as like 99% blessing and 1% curse. And the 99% blessing was that I had a ready-made best friend and felt community every single moment of my life, in the sense that I had somebody that was very much like me, walking through the world with me, looked like me, so often confused for me, understood me, had so many of the same interests. We went to college together, to law school together, to same law firm. We both ran for office at basically 1 year apart. I'm 1 minute older than he is, and so when we were growing up, sometimes I would wake up a couple of minutes before we were born and lord over him for that 1 minute that I was one year older than him. But it also gave me this perspective on community in terms of what made me feel so like I belonged, of understanding, of common interest, of the ability to dream and not get laughed at, and also the ability to share like your fears and your aspirations. And so when I think about community, I always start there. And I have found that in the places that for me have built the best community have been those places. And I think the challenge has always been, as we are different and have different experiences, it didn't come from the same place and obviously come from different families. How do we do that? And it's always been amazing, to be, for instance, in neighborhoods. And I grew up on the west side of San Antonio, which basically was a part of the city that was settled in the early 1900s by a lot of Mexicans who were fleeing the Mexican Revolution that went basically from 1910 to 1920. And when I grew up there in the 1980s, late 70s and 80s, it was a place where I felt community of people who had similar experiences, who had similar dreams, who watched out for each other. And when I think of connecting that with collective giving and then action, I think of my mom making $19,000 the year that my brother and I both got into Stanford, and being so happy when we got the admission letter on April 3rd, 1992, and then a couple of weeks later getting the bill. And that wasn't such a happy day. And at that time, the university cost about $28,000 each, like all in. I mean, it's a lot more now. Any of those that have gone through, or you have kids that are going through, but the community coming together and throwing like a party for us and raising $3,300 and getting us this set of American Tourister luggage that Joaquin and I literally used not only through college, but through law school and into our professional lives when we became lawyers. But this sense of community turning into action about the things and the people that we care about, that we love. So that's how I think about it.
Thank you. Well, I guess we're all going to go to our moms. It would be hard for anyone to believe that I didn't feel I belonged in Minneapolis. Everything about me is Minneapolis. And the irony is, the person who taught me generosity came here as a stranger under horrible circumstances. My mom's child was kidnapped, and she was in San Francisco, and she came to Minnesota to look for him. And from the moment she got off the plane, she felt welcomed by strangers on, and her whole mission was to pay that back and make other people belong. So every Thanksgiving, I generally knew the names of most of the people at the dinner, but she was always welcoming folks and built incredible community. But one story, more than any, symbolizes what she taught me. And my parents had a drugstore at what was 26th and 4th. It's torn down for the freeway now, but it was in one of the very few integrated parts of the city. And we always had to start Christmas dinner late, because the drugstore was very busy with people buying last-minute things for the holiday. So there was one Christmas where my mom was running around trying to do things to help my dad at the store, and there was a big soda fountain there. And this woman with 2 little kids was sitting at the soda fountain, and she had one bowl of soup and crackers for each of them and water. So my mom started talking to her and befriended her, and the woman kind of whispered to her that she couldn't buy Christmas gifts this year, but she was going to get them on the bus and go down to the Dayton store and see the holiday windows. And she felt so bad she couldn't get them anything. So they left, and my mom went around the store and got everybody in the store involved while they left. And they were regular customers, so my mom went across the street, got the superintendent of their apartment to open it up, and they got in a Christmas tree and Christmas gifts, and I still can't tell the story. But the woman came back, and the kids said, "Yeah, Mom, you said there wasn't going to be a Santa," and there was. My mom was my Santa.
I think we're supposed to just talk to each other.
Yeah. It's the funnest and the hardest part.
I know.
Could I kick this off with a question I want to ask another washed-up mayor?
That's right.
And I have to say, when you go to mayor's conferences, they're really funny because nobody listens. Everybody talks about their great idea, but everybody listened to Mayor Castro. He was all of our North Star. You and I have had big, fat titles. We also happen to be men, last time I checked. And we are talking about collective giving. And I'm wondering what you're doing as I'm wondering what I'm doing as I try to navigate how does somebody who had a title and walks in with that privilege reset how you show up to enable others to be collectively in league with you?
Yeah. Well, thank you for the question. I mean, I think these days, for me, I've been at this 2.5 years, and you know, I find myself, you know, when I reflect on this part of my journey, it's almost as much about being led as leading. And even we were talking about going into rooms, you know, how you go into rooms and listening, I find even more than when I was in public. And in public service, you would hope that people would listen, although you and I both know that doesn't happen as much as we would like a lot of times. But I find that trying to approach this with humility. The other thing is surrounding yourself with people who understand those values and live by those values. And Anais Amaya, who is here, leads our giving circles. And so it helps to be around a team who really loves community and who values collective action. And so I try to show up like that. And also, you know, without all of the pomp and the circumstance of being in office. Because it's easy to slip into that world, right, when you're in office.
Well, how do you show up? Because actually you've had leadership positions. You led the entire collective giving for all Asian American leaders here and all of that.
Like when nobody wanted to do it.
Yeah.
I was going around trying to shop it with different foundations to say, isn't this a great idea? And, you know, and I thought it was interesting because a lot of foundations often wanted to know how they could get more diverse donors into their, especially community foundations, right? But for us, it was really, you know, you and I had this conversation about all of us come from cultures of generosity. And in fact, if you have been through hard times, it has been community, and that has enabled you to survive. So part of Giving Circles is just catching up to how communities actually take care of each other, right? Creating a vehicle for that. And so I too just feel always humbled because when you have a giving circle, it's not like I'm the decider. We actually have conversations, and ours is an intergenerational giving circle, so all of our kids are involved. And that means they get to sit around and read the proposals and tell us what they think. And I just learned so much from them about why they think, you know, a certain proposal is important. And, you know, it was their advocacy that made us fund a couple of projects that the adults were like, what is that? You know, so I just think that when we treat each other as people who care about the world and who look around and want people who want to do good for our communities to win, we just show up differently, right? I don't know. I mean, if the smartest people had figured it out, we certainly wouldn't be where we are today. So you have to be humbled that way, right? And so I think it's I just know that culturally it is how I have grown up, but then to be able to give format to that in a way, I think you talked about that, Holly, which is that even though I grew up in a generous culture, much of that culture is really about taking care of family, and the Giving Circle is really about getting outside of just thinking about your family, thinking about your community, thinking about your world, and so I just learned so much. But I wanted to ask you, because I am seeing some of the shift at the foundation, and so it's one thing to speak about collective giving as giving circles, but it's another thing to actually practice collective giving as an approach. Tell us a little bit, or both of you, leading foundations, what does it look like on the inside? What does that mean? Yeah.
You know, when I got to the foundation, it was, my first thing was don't mess this up, because it was going really well. But it was this pretty tentative organization, and I think this relates to giving circles with who dominates and who doesn't, and how hierarchical they are. Because at the foundation, it seemed that it was a very tentative organization, because with all the talent there, most people weren't feeling empowered to make decisions because they wanted the senior leaders to weigh in. And over 10 years, slowly in an evolution, we've moved, because we got this, began to think about collective giving, and then thinking, how do we mirror that inside? So when the head of our impact left, I went to Patrice and Joanne and said, come back to me with the way you could co-lead this. And they came back, including different titles and recognizing different parts that they had. And we just went through the same evolution with our philanthropic services. There's Maggie McCracken, and she and Andrea Cummings lead our philanthropic service work. So now we have two co-leads there. We've now developed a implementation team and empowering more and more of that. And the more I kind of watch it, the more I go back to my days as a reporter, where somebody would be up talking and they would be designated as the head of it and all that. But the real thing you could do is when the meeting ended, you could find that person here or there who may not have said anything, and they had a real gem. And as somebody who runs his mouth too much, I really have to remind myself to slow down and let that air sit and let that voice come up. I am a work in progress on that, but it's a goal, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, for us, the giving circles have been such an important part of the Latino Community Foundation's identity, and have been meant as also this kind of statement about that philanthropy doesn't just belong to big philanthropic organizations, and to counter sometimes what's been a stigma in the community as though it's a community that doesn't give. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of our communities have been kind of stigmatized. And so we celebrate the giving circles, and what we try and do also is often follow their lead. We've done that on our grant making, for instance. They'll pool their resources and give to nonprofits, and then we'll take a page from that. And there have been a number of organizations that first came through our giving circles that then became grantees of the Latino Community Foundation, and that we have been really, really excited to see supported, not just through the giving circle work, but also through our work, and then send as a signal, because we're not a huge foundation, but we feel like we can send a signal. And so much of that has started with our giving circle. Same thing with the ability to use our voice as an advocate. Since we're a public charity, like community foundations are, we're able to do a certain limited amount of advocacy in city halls, and in Sacramento, sometimes in Washington, D.C. And a lot of times the concerns that are voiced come from giving circle members about that. So those are a couple of the ways that we've tried to integrate entirely what we do with our giving circles.
Yeah, I'm interested in also like thinking a little bit about how the collective giving ecosystem makes all of us better builders, right, of our communities. Because I think we tend to, my experience with philanthropy is that we think donors just want to be by themselves, and we create a lot of parameters so that donors don't have to interact with other donors, and that they're told like you can decide this on your own, and but I think the giving circle, even though our giving circle is very accessible because it's about just the average person who wants to be a donor in the work and things like that. But what I've learned is that actually everybody cares a lot about knowing who's out there in the world trying to fix whatever problems, right? And that if we're in community together, we are just better at learning about who all the doers are. We're better at thinking about, well, what do we really want to know at the end of this, right? And so I'm curious, like, for both of you running community foundations, how are you both like building the Giving Circle movement, but also beyond that, what do you do with donors, right? Donors who up till now maybe have been treated pretty in isolated ways, yeah.
Our whole body of work is about generous community and bringing the fund holders together. We don't call them donors, we call them fund holders because they're not donors. We want them to be loaners. Give us the money and then we'll get it out to where it happens. And Maggie and her team are running this big campaign, Stop Sitting on Your Assets. So number one, spend it. But we also, Bo and I had this really interesting experience of being on a giving circle together when all of these horrible federal cuts started to come down. We took $1 million, I think it was $1 million, right? We took $1 million and brought in 8, thank you. You can see why we need a staff. 10 people all together, and we sat in a room, and these were 9 other people who we deeply respected. Bo was, of course, one of them. And all of us are used to kind of being in charge. And so we recognized that the collected knowledge in that room was incredible. And I just loved that experience because we made decisions I don't think we would have made on our own. But at the very least, we brought just such a depth of knowledge. And I think there was a humility in a room of people who were quite used to leading, and that there was a humility about, I need this other person. And our gifts were all about, in this moment, everyone needs another person. So I loved the fact that we got the dollars out. I have to say, that was a really transformational experience for me. Yeah.
Yeah, our experience has been over the years that the Latino Community Foundation is unlike a lot of community foundations in that we don't have a ton of DAFs, but have been built up through larger foundations that have given, and also through what we call legacy circle members that are individuals, in addition to giving circles. But giving circles are pooling their resources and sending the money out. The legacy circles are helping to build the Latino Community Foundation up. And what I have been really pleased and excited about is how synchronized the priorities have been across the board with us as an organization, with Legacy Circle members, and with Giving Circle members. The latest example of that was just in this last year and a half on the issue of immigration. And our Giving Circle members in 2025, because they get to vote on what their priorities for giving are, and then make decisions in each circle about, which nonprofits are going to get their resources. And early in the year, when they saw what was happening coming out of Washington, they put immigration-related work right at the top. And then they broke a record in terms of fundraising among the giving circles and raised, I think, over $350,000 last year of those circles. And a lot of that was put into all of the immigration-related work that was happening trying to fill as many gaps as we can, although, I mean, we all know that the need is so much greater than the resources. And I want to shout out the foundation. I want to shout out Amber and Gloria and just a number of people who are here who have done a great job on that too.